Hello everyone, Forest Focus is Nottingham Forest are back in Premier League action for Ange Postecoglou's first home game in charge when they take on Sunderland at the City Ground on Saturday, or tomorrow as this comes out. It won't be an easy game though, and looking to tell us more about Forest opponents is Jonny Hawley from the Roker Report. Jonny, good morning mate, how are you?
Yeah, good morning. Pretty good actually. You know, it's a nice time to be a Sunderland fan, so all the mornings feel just that little bit easier to get out of bed.
Yeah, I bet they do. I mean, you say it's a nice time to be a Sunderland fan. I bet it's even nicer. There's some similarities between our clubs. Like, I guess we had 20 years outside the Premier League, and it's a pretty dark time. I think, was it 10 years for you? I'm not even sure, but you've had some rough times as well. So, yeah, just elaborate on how good it is to be a Sunderland fan right now.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It was 8 years in total, the spell bouncing between the Championship and League One, which, you know, again, as you're very well aware, that's a rough time to be a fan of a football club. You know, when you've not to be disparaging about clubs who don't get higher than that level, but when you've tasted the top flight and, you know, all of some of the circus that comes with it, but also, you know, the full houses, the great atmospheres, the big games. When you then have to go without that for such a long period of time, it's it's a really tough one to take, and it really damages the belief of a fan base, doesn't it? You know, you stop hoping for, you know, oh, maybe we'll win a cup, maybe we'll do something, maybe we'll get into Europe, and it's, you know, oh, well, I hope that we manage to scrape into the playoffs in League One for the third season in a row or something. It's it's rough, but I think having gone through that makes it all the sweeter when you back up and you start picking the results, you know, in the Premier League. Obviously, it's really early days, but we've had, you know, 7 points out of a possible 9 from home already, which obviously when you've got a season ticket and you're going every week, seeing results like that is what makes it start to feel like it was worthwhile. You know, kind of going through that near decade of a 4-letter word before you reach the promised land once again.
Yeah, massively. I hear you, certainly. So we look at this season, and I spoke to one of the other lads from Roker Report, and they were kind of optimistic, but predicted 17th, which is often the kind of maximum prediction of a fan of any promoted club these days. So to start, as you have seventh in the league, I think you've got 8 points already, or something like that. How surprised have you been? And I only see the results from one performance, which we'll get into, but is it merited? Have you had any luck or not?
Oh, there's been a bit of luck along the way, without a doubt. I think you can't pick up points in the Premier League on a consistent basis without it, really. The games are always obviously between, apart from, you know, maybe 4 or 5 at the very top end, the games tend to be between teams where it's fairly evenly matched in a lot of ways. You know, there's not, I mean, I'm sure we'll have some fairly one-sided results, but there's a lot of caginess and feeling each other out. And particularly when there's a team like Sunderland, who you have to imagine the vast majority of the league haven't got the amount of data on us. They haven't analysed us in the level of detail that they will have done, you know, the other 17 or however many clubs that they face on a yearly basis. So I think we've surprised a few teams, and we've had, you know, a little bit of luck here and there. Our keeper saved a penalty against Brentford, which, you know, it was just a poor penalty, really. It's lucky in a sense for us that really you give away a penalty, you expect a goal to go in and stuff like that. But I think by and large, we've certainly acquitted ourselves well. You know, I haven't looked at any of the games that we've played and thought, oh, we were never in that. You know, there's never been a game where we've come away thinking, oh, that's the step up to the Premier League that everybody bangs on about. The game against Crystal Palace was probably our toughest test of the season, both on paper and in terms of how the game panned out. And even there, while we weren't very threatening and never really, you know, put them under sustained periods of pressure in their own final third, I thought that we were competent enough with the ball. We were able to hold on to it for, you know, passages of play. We weren't just a team who was sticking 11 men behind the ball and praying. So I certainly think that we've justified and merited the points that we've earned. But yeah, obviously there's little strokes of luck, and we've had a couple of VAR calls go our way, which, as every Premier League fan knows, outside of maybe the top 3, that's not always a regular occurrence either. So yeah, we've managed to just about have the rub of the green so far, but obviously 5 games is a pretty small sample size for that.
Going back to the similarities between the clubs, then the way we came up was quite similar. The playoffs set you back in terms of less prep time. We had our squad that came up was kind of decimated by loads of players out of contract, loads of loan players. So we were starting from scratch almost. You sort of were, in the sense you had a very young team And all due respect to them, you probably needed to add a lot to it. And you've done that. You've thrown a lot at it, as we did. Can you tell us a bit more about the players that have come in? Because apart from Granit Xhaka, I think the average fan, myself included, and I watch a lot of games, hadn't heard of quite a lot of these players, apart from Diarra, maybe the midfielder. So can you tell us a bit about them and how well they've done?
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing that's impressed me the most about them is how quickly they've managed to gel together and look like a pretty cohesive team. And obviously, a lot of credit for that's got to go to the manager and the coaching staff for the work that they do on the training pitch. I think what helped primarily was we got quite a lot of them through the door very early in the summer. As you say, you're at a bit of a disadvantage coming up from the playoffs. And, I think when yous came up, you bought even more players than we did. I think we both spent a similar amount of money. I think we ended up with 14 in the end, not counting Mark Gue, who came and then left us as quickly as he'd come back to Chelsea.
Yeah, that was a strange one.
Yeah, we could do 20 minutes just on that, I reckon. But it was important because when you're trying to, pull all of those disparate sorts of players from different backgrounds and countries and all the rest of it, when you're trying to pull them together and form a unit, time is, the king above all others in that situation. You just need time to get them together, run them through the drills, get all the tactics through the head, all that stuff that goes on the training pitch. And the early signs have been that that's worked. So, some of the new lads, obviously in midfield, Noah Siddiqui has particularly surprised a lot of us, I think. 20 years old, signed for around 20 million euros. He was courted by clubs such as Leeds previously, so obviously on the radar of a few teams around our sort of level. But I think the majority of us expected him to come in and maybe provide some competition in the midfield, deputise here and there, but he's come in and started every game and he's been phenomenal. And obviously I could run through the whole list of players. I think it would take a while. But the thing that stood out most, two things I would say. One is we've broken with our established model a little bit in the sense that we've, particularly in defence, clearly targeted experience. Obviously Xhaka comes in the midfield, who's 32, but in the back four, we've brought in players like Nordi Mukiele, who's I think 27 years old, Omar Alderete, who's the same, both at centre-back. We've brought Lucharel Gertruda in on loan from Leipzig, so he can kind of cover centre-back and cover right-back. Again, very experienced. And kind of going hand in hand with that, a lot of them have got European experience as well. So there are a lot of combined Champions League, Europa League and Europa Conference League games under the belts of these players, which is obviously something the club have looked at and gone, like you said, very young squad. Yes, they were, good last season in the Championship and did the hard yards to get us promoted. But stepping into the Premier League, players with that level of experience of the really highest level and highest intensity games, the levels of pressure that you put under in those situations, you just can't replicate that anywhere else. And so I think it was, I think it was a conscious effort to add that into the mixture that we already have in the squad of some youth, of some, we still have some quality players that were already at the club. But yeah, I think it was a pretty joined up approach in terms of the strategy. I think it just made sense. And there were a lot of times in transfer windows gone by where you certainly couldn't accuse Sunderland of making sense with the transfer dealings. Maybe Will Grigg on deadline day in League One being the top of the pile of those examples. But yeah, it feels like very much everything's working in harmony from the owner down to the sporting directors and the head of recruitment, right down to the manager who, they're obviously all on the same page. And I think you can tell it's reaping the rewards so far, and fingers crossed it continues.
Yeah, because it's not always been like that. I suppose we all saw the Sunderland till I die thing and all that kind of stuff. I mean, feel free to weigh in on the ownership and how things have changed. But also, I was going to ask, did last season feel like a bit of a crossroads, pivotal season? Because I remember on this podcast, end of the season, we did our, who are the best players in the Championship you should sign? And Sunderland players, I wanted to say that we've got to buy Chris Rigg if Sunderland don't go up and stuff like that. Was there a feeling amongst you guys that, if we don't go up soon, some of these young players are going to get picked off?
100%. And even though we did go up, we still lost Joe Bellingham and Tommy Watson to Brighton as well. Now, we got good money for them. But that shows you, even with making the step up, there's still always the risk that there is, players that maybe outgrow you a little bit in terms of their own journey, or just the right offer comes in from a club with perhaps better league positions and deeper pockets, which can be difficult to turn down. So certainly kind of within the conversations that we were having within the fan base, it was a lot of, well, if we don't go up, Chris Rigg, maybe Dan Neil, Trey Hume, these sort of players, even like Eliza Mayenda, the way that he finished the season and scored, a goal at Wembley and stuff, there was very much a feeling that those could be names that were high on the lists of the recruitment sheets among Europe's premier clubs, which might have been a bit difficult to turn down. So it very much felt like if we wanted to keep the core of the squad together, we were just going to have to get promoted. There was still a lot of faith and confidence, I think, that if we didn't go up, that it would be bad, but it wouldn't be a catastrophe. I think there's always a feeling that with the way that the club's being run, the old cliche of no place bigger than the club, it kind of comes true when you trust the powers that be to replace anybody with the money that they bring in adequately. And so far, the hit rate on that has been, it's been pretty phenomenal, really, particularly for a club that's been bouncing around League One and the Championship. Those are tough divisions to get your recruitment right anyway. And then obviously stepping up to the Premier League, you're fishing in a whole different pond. And yeah, the knock-on effects that had for the squad have been massive. I mean, you just need to look at the state that Sheffield United are in right now. I think they've lost 6 from 6 now in the Championship. Obviously, sacked Wilder, sacked Sellers, and reappointed Wilder. It's the difference that a 95th minute goal in the playoff final can make seem to be absolutely enormous. So chuffed it was us on the right side of it for once.
Yeah. I remember our game against Huddersfield. Ours was a lot less entertaining than yours. I watched that game, but it got over the line. That's all that matters.
You call it entertaining? It was stressful for me. I can tell you that.
Yeah, massively. Right, just before I ask Jonny a couple more, a word for the Trent navigation. This game is televised. It's on Sky, so you can watch the game at the Nav and enjoy it on the big screens. Get your pizza, get your burgers, get your beers, obviously, and all that stuff. But also a quick video. This is looking way ahead to Christmas, but you can put your tickets now for Rick Parfitt Jr.'s gig. There you go. You can tell I didn't have a Sunderland video ready for that one. Right. In terms of style of play, like I say, I've only seen the one game in full, which was the game yesterday against Villa. Yesterday, as we record this. Villa, I was amazed how bad Villa have become. But on the other hand, Sunderland, I thought were really good, might have won it. In terms of style of play, the game's impacted by the red card, but you were very compact, hit teams on the break, lots of pace and energy. Is that what we can expect on Saturday from you?
Yeah, I think pretty much nailed on. That's going to be the way that we play in basically every game this season, unless there's some sort of specific circumstance that dictates it, like a formation or a tactic from an opposition manager that we want to adapt to, or, player injuries and suspensions or what have you. That's been the blueprint last season as well. And that's why, I think in some ways, in a lot of ways, we were disadvantaged compared to the other teams that were going up. Obviously, they already had better squads. They got a lot more points than us and all the rest of that. But the way that we played, it already felt like we would be quite suited to playing in the Premier League if we were to get promoted, because we weren't going up playing open, expansive, risky football, which obviously a lot of the 6 that have come up and then gone straight down over the past couple of seasons, you could certainly accuse Vincent Kompany's Burnley or Russell Martin's Southampton of doing things that way. Whereas we always felt like a pretty pragmatic team. And I think obviously Regis Lebris has to take the credit for that, because he hasn't got the ego of some managers. And I'm thinking of a man in a dugout in Manchester when I say that, who won't adapt for anybody come hell or high water. Lebris is very much out of almost like the Thomas Frank school of management, where it's, how do I get the best out of the players that are in front of me, and how do I best set them up to combat the team that's in front of them? And for that reason, yeah, like I say, the way that you described our style of play is pretty accurate, and I think that's not likely to change very much. So I'd certainly expect going away to the City ground, a slightly unknown quantity now, obviously, with Ange Postecoglou coming in charge and not having had, the greatest amount of time to get his feet under the table yet, but certainly based on last season's evidence, an extremely tough place to go. So, yeah, I'd expect us to be, again, like you say, compact, well-drilled, aggressive in the press, but without being, again, without being too risky with it. We're not going to be, having 5 or 6 lads sprinting 60 yards up the pitch to come and try and close your centre backs down. Maybe once or twice in the whole game, but certainly not on a regular basis. And it's going to be very much trying to take advantage of the pace, because that's probably our biggest weapon that we've got, is we've just got pace to burn through the forward line. I mean, Wilson Isidore, who's made a flying start of the season, he's a real threat in behind on the break. He scored a fair few of his goals last season in the same way. So it's going to be, for me, it's going to be interesting as well to see how Forest set up, because if you set up like a traditional Ange team, it feels like it should, in theory, play into the way that we would want you to play. But obviously, with a huge caveat that we don't actually know for sure how he's going to set up. And even if he does exactly what we think he's going to do, and we predict it down to the last movement, you've still got some bloody good players who can hurt us. So I wouldn't say that it's nailed on to be a clean sheet for Sunderland. I think that's fair to say.
How do you see kind of the dynamics of this game almost around us as well? Because I know we're recording this at the start of the week. Jonny's helping me out because I'm in Seville. So I'm sure we'll spend all week on the podcast saying this is a big week for Ange. He needs a win, to get the fans on side and all that stuff. Do you feel that helps Sunderland in the sense there might be some anxiety in the crowd and you can maybe play on that or not?
I think we've got to hope so. You've got to take any advantage you can get in the Premier League. Trying to take points from anybody's a big ask. And so, I think we've got to try and not spoil the game, but I think we've got to go and be very mindful of the fact that if we can keep things quiet for the first sort of 15, 20 minutes, then it's possible that the nerves start to grow. People start to get that little bit edgier, thinking, actually, this is a big game we need to win, and it's not started great. Where's the ideas? Where are the goals going to come from? Because obviously, towards the end of our time in the Premier League last time, as your team gets worse season on season, that feeling grows within the fan base, and you keep changing managers because it never works. So then the new guy comes in and then there's pressure on him, and it feels like it just snowballs. And so having been in those crowds, it just became a truism of coming to the Stadium of Light that if you could keep us quiet for 20 minutes, more often than not, you're probably going to comfortably win 3-0, because that feeling amongst the crowd, it really does transmit to the players when there are nerves in the air. I think it's, unfortunately, it's very contagious. You quite like it to be the other way, I think, but it's a bit of a unique situation in that sense. Well, not unique because every club goes through managerial changes, but I think particularly with the abrupt shift in style that you would expect between Nuno and Ange, that gives us maybe even a bit more of a window of opportunity to try and take advantage of it, because there's going to be the double whammy almost, I think, for Forest of it's a new manager finding his feet, and you've got such a defined idea, I think, within the heads of the English football fan of what an Ange team looks like, that trying to then work out how that's marrying up to the way that it's actually turning out on the pitch for Forest is going to be, it's going to be an interesting one. So I think it's going to be, look, it's got the potential to go the other way as well. If an early goal goes in for Forest, and then Ange feels like he can take the handbrake off and the players start playing with that freedom, it could become a very long afternoon, evening for Sunderland. And I might not be enjoying watching it on the telly. But I think for us, we have to try and take advantage of that, because if you look at it just man for man, quality-wise on the pitch, it's a hard game for us. It's one on paper that you look at and you think, if we even take a point out of this, we've done a pretty good job there.
Any of our players that you kind of pick out and think, oh, he's a good player, I'm a bit worried about him or not?
It's an easy one, but Morgan Gibbs-White, fantastic footballer. He's a phenomenal player. But I think you've got quality sprinkled throughout the team, really. I look at the centre-back partnership, and again, yet to see really how they're going to set up under Ange. But last season, I thought Milenkovic and Murillo were absolutely brilliant. Murillo especially, he's a bit mad, but I love that in a defender. It's a bit like Alderete is for us. He's Paraguayan, so there's just something about seeing a big South American bruiser at the back that just gets us a bit excited. So I love to watch those. And Gibbs-White, obviously a phenomenal player. Chris Wood up front, I can't believe how long he's carried on this form. Everyone was saying it was a purple patch when he very first started banging them in for years again. And then, he's just sort of never looked back, has he? Like I say, that spine of the team for me, Even Sells in goal, he's not maybe one of the flashiest names, but he's certainly a safe pair of hands. He's not going to be, I might jinx him, but he doesn't tend to drop too many howlers. So, yeah, I think when you've got a strong spine like that, then it's not irrelevant what's around it, but it's a bit less crucial what's around that spine, because if things are right in the center of the pitch, then more often than not, you're at least going to be battling, and you're going to be in the conversation to take the 3 points. So yeah, for me, it's all about how we obviously stop the service to the forwards, of course, because you don't want the opposition to be creating chances, but it's going to be about how we manage defending the center of the pitch, where I think a lot of the danger comes from, without overcommitting and letting you just have the freedom of the wings. Because if we allow that, then if you've got wide men and get the ball into Chris Wood, he's just as dangerous as if things are going through the middle. So yeah, I'm expecting it to be very cat and mouse, I think, in terms of the way that we start the game defensively. I think we're going to be very much trying to feel you out and see, okay, where are they favouring, who's looking like they're the most dangerous on the day, and then we're probably going to have to sort of shift the focus accordingly. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit like a chess match, I suppose, in that sense, where we're going to have to respond to you, I think, rather than dictating the tempo of the game ourselves, which, you expect as an away team, and certainly as a promoted side.
Yeah, massively. Yeah, it takes me back to our first 2 seasons up, and probably last season as well, actually. This is the first season where it feels very, 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 very different, and it's a bit nerve-wracking, I must admit. But we'll see how it plays out under Ange. Right, just before we let Jonny go, quick word for our second sponsor, Streamline Growth. If you're looking to grow your business, you're a small business, you want to take it to the next level, do check out the QR code on screen or click the link in the description, run by a big Forest fan in James Bogue, and he will help you out, and he will give you a book as well to tell you how to take things to the next level. Jonny, if people want to hear more of you guys post-match getting your verdict, where can they find you?
Yeah, so we have daily podcasts on the Howe the podcast feed. So you can find that wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, all the rest of it. At Roker Report on Twitter is kind of the main hub for the Twitter side of social media. We're on Blue Sky as well, which would be the same handle with, the bsky dot whatever at the start. The website, rokerreport.sbnation.com, where we've got, all of our articles that come out, again, daily content, match previews, match reviews, opinion pieces, regular features, all the rest of it, all the content you'd expect from a respected fan platform such as ourselves. Yeah, and you can also find us on, other social medias, Facebook and the rest of it. But yeah, at Roker Report on Twitter and Howe the podcast on the podcast feeds are the central hubs of where you want to be going to find any of our content. If you're a masochist like us and you want to think more about Sunderland every day of your life.
Excellent. We're on Blue Sky as well. I never say that, but we are on Blue Sky. So if you're on there, not on Twitter or on both, do check us out there. Right. If you've enjoyed this, do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe, consider membership or Patreon. Join us on the Discord channel to chat all things Forest as well. If you're a member, or just a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify would be lovely. We shall be back tomorrow with a post-match show, and then Monday, obviously, with the full breakdown, looking ahead to the next week and more European action. But in the meantime, have a good day. And if we don't see you then, we shall see you soon.